Welcome, everyone, to episode 60. My name is David Reed. You're tuning in to Dial the Gate. Saul Rubinek is joining us for this episode. He was Emmett Bregman in Stargate SG-1's Heroes Part 1 and 2. Arguably the best two-parter that SG-1 produced. And we're going to be bringing him in just a moment here. But before we get started, if you like Stargate and you want to see more content like this on YouTube, it would mean a great deal if you click the like button. It really makes a difference with YouTube's algorithm and will definitely help the show grow its audience. Please also consider sharing this video with a Stargate friend, and if you want to get notified about future episodes, click the subscribe icon. Giving the bell icon a click will notify you the moment a new video drops, and you'll get my notifications of any last-minute guest changes. This is key if you plan on watching live. And clips from this live stream will be released over the course of the next several days on our companion channel, gateworld.net, on YouTube. So this episode is going to be slightly different because we're trying something new with Saul and with Vaitiare in the next couple of hours here. As always, if you have questions for our guests, you're invited to submit them at youtube.com/dialthegate, where you're watching this right now. In this episode, I'd like to invite you to start submitting your questions in the comments section. So instead of having the moderators go through and dig through the comments where everyone's chatting, I'd like to try to see if we can have people start submitting in the comments to set them aside and give the moderators a chance to look there exclusively. For this episode of the next one, we'll be doing a little bit of crossover for both, but let's give that a shot. So if you have a question for Saul, submit it in the comments section on the YouTube page, and we will go from there. In the meantime, I get to talk with him. Mr. Saul Rubinek, Emmett Bregman on Stargate SG-1. Sir, it is a pleasure to have you. Thank you so much for joining us.
My pleasure.
How are you doing? I understand you just went back to work.
Yes, for the first time in a year, I did an episode of The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel in New York. I just got back to Los Angeles, and I've been vaccinated, so that helps my comfort level.
Absolutely. What was it like finally getting back into the thick of it out there? Was it weird getting your feet wet again?
Well, it's just weird getting out of the house after a year of mostly not, being safe and mask wearing wherever I went, but we didn't go very many places. And going to an airport and getting on an airplane and going to a hotel and then going to work, all of that was a bit strange. But, it was most people, 99% of people are compliant and wearing masks and are careful, and the set that Amazon and the people at Mrs. Maisel were running were incredibly careful, and everybody was very caring and cautious and sensitive to what was going on, especially because we were working with background actors who are also as protected as we are, and the main cast or guest cast. And the protocols that are in place, I imagine, are pretty similar all over North America. I don't know what they're like in Europe, but I would imagine there's a similarity everywhere about how people are handling set safety, both for the health and safety of all members of the crew and cast, but also for insurance reasons and all other reasons like that, because they do. They have something that I didn't know that they had, which is a little device about a third the size of an iPhone that you carry with you with your name on it, which is a electronic contact tracer. So in case somebody does end up being positive, they test you every day. And in case somebody does turn out positive, then I guess they can figure out who that person was in contact with. And anyway, it's very complicated. Hopefully a year from now, we'll have to be less vigilant than that.
Absolutely. Well, it just shows we're going to get through this one way or the other. So, and a lot of people are like, I don't know, man. It's like, we have to let this thing, we have to let good old human ingenuity take over. So pretty much everyone that I talk to, all the Canadian cast, a lot of them have been back to work, and they carry, several of them carry proximity devices so that, if they're too close together, then it starts going off and everything else. So You give humans a chance to figure it out, and we will do so. So it's funny. I've been going over some of the people talking in chat right now, and a couple of them are like, I don't know if we should trust this guy. He kidnapped Data.
You shouldn't trust me.
I have to say, because that was the first time I had ever seen you, and I mean it was a tragedy that brought you on, but at the same time it presented one of the more interesting aliens that Next Generation had ever introduced, and that was a terrific performance, sir.
Thank you. Yeah, I was very lucky. I happened to be in Los Angeles at the time, and the director of the episode, Tim Bond, was somebody that I'd known since I was a kid, actually, in Canada. And also because Brent Spiner and I had done theater together in New York. And so when their original guest star got ill and couldn't do it, then I was brought in at a moment's notice. I just happened to be in LA. I wouldn't have been something I could have done if I were in Toronto, which is where I was living at the time. I think I was living at the time in both New York and Toronto, and I happened to be visiting Los Angeles. And I had asked Tim if I could visit the set because Brent was, an old friend, and I liked the show. I think it was only its second season that they were shooting, and he said, "Yeah, just give me a couple of days." And then I got a call in the middle of the night saying, "How badly do you want to visit the set?"
Jeez. Really visit the set. What?
Yeah.
I have to ask there was a line about the Andorians wanting to make a bid on the shipment of Tellurian spices, and you said they have 4 days to decide. We have to decide right. All right. Is that an ad lib?
I have no idea.
Okay, that's fair.
I have no idea. This is 30 years ago.
This is
more
true.
Than 30 years. Probably 32 years ago. And I really, all I remember was having a lot of fun because it was mostly a two-hander between me and Brent and an old friend director. And I had a real great time doing it. It was really a fun character. Yeah.
Saul, it was fantastic, that they picked you for the role of Emmett Bregman. Rob Cooper had been wanting to do this kind of a show for a little while now. He was a huge fan of MASH and the 2-parter where they had the documentary folks come in to the MASH camp and just lay it all out. And I really want to know your take on this character and what it was. I mean, you were born in Germany in a very tumultuous time, as a result of, some of humanity doing the worst to each other. And then you get this role that's has, in my opinion, the best speeches in SG-1. A couple of the best speeches are this character.
Well, partly because Robert Cooper's generosity of spirit. I've had experiences before doing sci-fi that was even closer to my background, starting with an episode of The Outer Limits where I time travel back to a concentration camp.
Oh, wow.
In a really extraordinary episode of The Outer Limits that I had shot probably not far from that time when I did SG-1. And also later on in Warehouse 13, the writers used my background, being this child of Holocaust survivors, as part of the storyline for Artie Nielsen, the character in Warehouse 13, which is a kind of science fiction fantasy show. This episode was supposed to be one episode, and I don't know how I was picked. I was grateful. I liked the show. I hadn't seen all 6 seasons of it at that point. I'd seen it intermittently. And I knew friends who had been on it, and I knew we had a really great group of regular actors who were really wonderful actors and good directors. Writing was really top notch. And it was an interesting character because the original idea was that a documentary filmmaker is, treated with tremendous suspicion as a kind of left-wing liberal who would somehow denigrate the armed services, which I played into a little bit, knowing that ultimately I was going to not be denigrating them. I'd be talking about their heroism, but I didn't know how deeply I would get into it. I also I wasn't really aware it was going to be the death of one of the regular characters for good. I wasn't really aware of that until we got into it. But but we did have a lot of discussions about it, and I asked whether or not I could, sometimes you get onto a show and they really, and I have this discussion usually early before I accept. If the dialogue is such, sometimes I feel I might be a bit miscast. And even though I'm grateful for having been cast, especially if I haven't auditioned for it, and this is an offer, I'm wondering whether or not I can make the dialogue fit a little bit better if I wasn't really changing content. And they were very open about that. And I had a lot of ideas about, they were open to improvisation, which I gather was not unusual on the show, which is very fortunate. When you have a showrunner, I think Robert was also the showrunner and also the writer of the episode. Am I right?
Correct.
It's when you have a showrunner on a show, and I wasn't used to it yet. It wasn't until I was doing a regular role in Warehouse 13, and Jack Kenny, our showrunner and head writer, was on the set most of the time, that you realize the benefit of that. Because when a showrunner and a head writer is 3,000 miles away from where you're shooting, there's not only the time difference, but the directors are given the edict that they really have to stick to the script, and for good reason, because they could get into all kinds of story problems. Mm-hmm. But when the showrunner is there, then improvisation is more of a possibility, because they can say, well, why don't you do it? And Andy, who directed the episode, I think, certainly wasn't his first turn at the bat on this show. No. And he had done a lot of these, and was an extraordinarily talented, very talented director, and with actors, and knew the show really well. There was a looseness, about the way we approached it. And all the scenes with all the actors, I remember, were, really fun, because of that looseness, and because Robert was so open and Andy was open. The whole shooting style of doing a documentary, they were doing something different. They all appreciated the difference, the kind of shooting, being able to look right at the camera, the whole shooting style, the handheld feeling of it, my little crew, and right. and our stuff that was going on. The biggest thing that happened for me was a long discussion where I said, look, I think that you're missing an opportunity. And Robert jumped on it and said, absolutely, what can we do? And we collaborated together on a speech that is one of my favorite moments in all of my career, which is talking about the importance, especially after a Trump era, talking about the importance of news and about true reporting, and about how important it is to a democratic society. And I remember that speech, and I remember we worked on it together. He was very open to my contribution. I mean, it's all Robert Cooper, but I did have, I felt, a significant contribution, which a lot of showrunners' egos won't allow. There wasn't any of that problem. And I felt appreciated, and I felt welcomed by not only Robert and Andy, but the cast, and it was treated as a very high quality thing. And it was very wonderful when, from what I understand happened, is that when they did their first cut of the show and it was long, rather than doing a long episode or a special long episode or whatever, then they decided, why don't we add additional scenes and create a two-parter? And that allowed for the depth of the show to come out. And it allowed scenes that normally would have been cut down significantly or excised completely to be in the show. And that's all a combination of Robert Cooper and the network making those, agreeing to do it. And that's why I think it's why it's a fan favorite, is because of that. Also because it was significant to lose a regular cast member in those circumstances. Very significant, wonderful actress, and all of that made it high drama. Plus, I do remember how emotional Don Davis was. I think he was also at one time in the military.
Yes, Don was. He was a captain.
And a show about the military. He was very emotional, incredibly supportive, really a wonderful actor to work with. And I just remember, it was just a really a highlight in my life working on episodic television, which can sometimes be a grind. Sometimes you're plugged in and they're trying to get in and out really quick, and the showrunners are 3,000 miles away, and you're not, it's a good role. It might be a fun episode, but this was a special experience.
Rob was saying, that he had some spirited discussions with you about getting that dialogue exactly right, because, that it is the work that the type of people that Bregman do is so key to a democratic society. I'll never forget that speech for as long as I live. You force the press into the cold, and all you will get is lies and innuendo, and nothing is more dangerous to a free society than
right.
a media that is in service to the state. And it's a powerful message. And I think you're absolutely right. I think it's one of the reasons why, people, even though we lose one of the universally loved characters, is an important message that continues to be well received by fandom. That many of them weren't even born when the episode aired. This thing just continues to succeed.
That speech was used. I've seen excerpts I've seen that speech used or quoted on Twitter, talking about all kinds of different subject matters especially over the last 4 years. People would reference that speech when people were talking about fake news or about how the media is complicit in conspiracy bullshit and stuff like that. And I was gratified to see it used. It was an important. It was very important that I'll just never forget how open Robert was to doing it, because it wasn't in the original script, and it was a special moment. And I remember saying really, really well, saying, look, I have this idea. It's not going to take any time, because you have to cover me anyway. They're bringing a body in, and we don't know who it is, and we don't know what's going on. You have to cover me, and all it's going to be is an extra 5 minutes, which you can take out. You can cut this speech if you need to, and just say, hey, I need access, cut. But why don't you just leave the camera running? And what will you say? I said this. Wow. I will say a version of this. And I remember at lunch being with Andy and being with Robert, saying, look, I've written this first draft of this, and they worked on it, made it significantly better. And that's what happened.
Wow.
I remember that.
Wow. And it's one of the more powerful scenes because Amanda Tapping's character of Carter, usually under control and on top of things, and you push her over the edge in that scene where she yells at you and tells you to shut the camera off. And we'd never seen Carter like that. And we understand. We find out later she's lost one of her dearest friends. You and the character pull out some of the best performances in that entire cast. Particularly with Terrell as well. Before we lose her, there is a romantic tension underneath there. She is drawn to Emmett's charm. It's one of my favorite scenes in the mess hall where she's like, what's with the ring? He's like, oh, sentimental. My wife died. We're beginning to connect with this character, even though he has an adversarial relationship with our heroes, with our friends through the television.
You can understand it. You can understand
Correct.
the adversarial. They think they're going to be, cut up in a documentary for a particular point of view that is not going to be flattering. And I don't, you don't know what my intentions are really until the very end. Also, it's a discovery for my character to find out how heroic these people really are, as they would be in any real life situation. In a terrible, warlike situation where people die not necessarily for noble reasons. Although she does die quite for noble reasons, but not all soldiers do. Very often they're dying for a lot of old white men sitting in armchairs somewhere. But this is, and so my character, he knows he's there to document something that might eventually go public. He's been given an order to do it. He doesn't know what, he's trying to get at some kind of truth. He's got integrity. And you don't know where that integrity lies until there's high pressure.
Exactly right. And he keeps going.
The important thing that I'm going to emphasize is that if it hadn't been a two-parter, I think that speech might have hit the cutting room floor. And many moments would have hit the cutting room floor. And it was a very brave decision on their part. And their creative instincts were right on the money to look at it and go, we have something special here. And it was for Andy, the episodes that would never end shooting. They kept going, shooting all kinds of stuff and having to fill it out. But it's really worth it. I'm asked about it all the time. Go to conventions all the time. Yeah. People come who are Stargate fans and talk about those episodes specifically. And it wasn't until, I don't think I was really aware of the episode's popularity. For some reason, I wasn't aware of the awards that it was nominated for at the time even, or the critical response, because working actor, trying to support my family, I'm just moving on to the next project. Right. And I don't really usually pay attention to reviews, and I don't pay attention to the award stuff really. So I wasn't aware of it until many years later so that was 2003, and probably not until 2009 or so, 6 years later, when I was at my very first convention because of Warehouse 13, and we were at Comic-Con 6 years later, after we just in the middle of shooting our first season of Warehouse 13, where people came up to me about Stargate 1 and 2 and had pictures of my character, whose name I didn't even remember, and saying, do you know about these awards? And do you know that it's a fan favorite? I really didn't know, I wasn't aware.
The cast.
I wasn't aware of, it's the kind of thing that happens to actors occasionally, especially actors like me who aren't, stars. We're just working actors. For example, somebody said, I think somewhere around 1990, in the middle 90s, somebody said, or in late 90s, are you aware that Kivas Fajo, which is the name of the character that I played in the Star Trek: The Next Generation episode, is a game on the internet, and there's playing cards, and your character is a key card. I have no idea, none. So things to discover about sci-fi. Yeah.
The sci-fi fandom is one that continues to persist generation after generation. There are, doctors and lawyers shows. There is a lot of procedural programming out there that is perfectly good. There is something about science fiction, and Heroes 1 and 2 specifically, and an episode like The Most Toys as well, that speaks to the human condition and allows us to recognize the darker aspects of ourselves and face situations like overwhelming greed or hostility for alien races or a number of different things, and force us to think about our place in that situation. puts us in the center of that and go, how would I deal with that situation? I don't necessarily like that guy, but I understand why he's doing what he's doing. If I were placed there, I may decide something similar. That's one of the things that it does so well.
I agree.
One of the things that I've always wanted to know, you make a meal out of your scripts, and I want to know if it's just an acting choice or if it's something that you just instinctually do, if you're allowed to on the set at a given time. You speak the dialogue as if you're just making it up as you go. How do you do that? I mean, you have little asides in the dialogue and everything else. You're going in and out and weaving around it. How do you achieve that?
Well, you're just talking about the craft of acting.
Yeah.
And what was it? Spencer Tracy used to say, just acting, the secret of acting is just don't ever let them catch you at it. And don't bump into the furniture. But when looking at Heroes Part 1 and 2, when I watched it recently, knowing I was going to do this, I was also caught by a feeling of, it's partly because it was a little bit improvised, and that was allowed, and so that there was a feeling of spontaneity that comes with it, and I think it's something that I try to bring. All actors try to bring that. All good actors really are working very hard to make it look as if it's happening on the spot, to be in the present moment, and sometimes the circumstances work in your favor, and the atmosphere on the set works in your favor, and the character, the dialogue, and the way it's written works in your favor. And sometimes it's not in your favor. Sometimes actors have to turn, not in this case, it was really well written, but sometimes actors have to take, sow's ears and turn them into silk purses, as we say. Sometimes you've got stuff that has been so worked on and made homogeneous by committee and executives and notes. Sometimes writers don't have the power to fight what happens in the development of stories, that you end up with episodes that are forgettable. And I'm sure it happens on procedurals all the time, and where character is neglected, and you really are trying to make your day becomes the most important thing. And you end up with stuff that vaguely resembles humanity, but isn't really. And so, yes, I mean, I do really hope that whenever I approach a project, unless somebody tries to stop me, I mean, from the very beginning, I'm doing an episodic, if I'm working on an episodic television show as a guest star, I treat it as if it's an Academy Award winning movie. I'm treating it the way I would any project. I'm trying to set the bar really high. And unless somebody stops me, unless circumstances stop me from, and I have to work around it. And I find that's true with most artists in all situations. Dancers, writers, actors, musicians are always at their best, are trying to break through a boundary, and if they're prevented by circumstance, finances, politics, ego, they hopefully, we all try to work around it and combat it as best we can and move on to the next subject, to the next job. It is the craft of trying to make sure something appears human. That's why I love playing bad guys, because really, you play a bad guy the same way as you would a good guy. It's not what they look like or the way they smile. It's what they do that makes them bad. You don't know somebody's a bad guy quite often until they're in the middle of doing something horrible. Remember, anyway, it's really not that relevant. But I do remember seeing a documentary. I don't remember what it was called, The Thin Red Line or The Thin Blue Line. It was interviewing a psychopath. And I remember the real psychopath. And I remember watching it and going, there's nothing about, if an actor was playing this role in this interview, he might be tempted to show you some kind of crack in this facade. But there isn't one. And the only time you see a crack in that man's facade was while he was strangling you. You know, that you wouldn't see it until it was happening. I remember that was an interesting acting lesson. But I take your compliment. I'm very appreciative of what you said. I do hope that that it doesn't look written when I'm acting. You're talking about the craft of acting, and sometimes I'm better at it than others. You know? Well, I do my best.
Not every script is going to be a home run. You know, you gotta take what you're given, and sometimes a job is a job, and there's nothing wrong with that. You know, absolutely. I have some fans who have submitted some questions here. If you don't
go
mind,
ahead.
Absolutely. Yep. Teresa wanted to know, in what genre do you prefer to act, or are they all more or less the same for you? Drama, comedy, something else? What do you love sinking your teeth into more than others?
Well, I don't think that I've ever done a show. I don't think I've ever done a performance where there isn't some humor. I think I don't really like stuff that has absolutely no humor, no matter what the drama show is. I mean, the intense, violent movies, they're at their best when there's also some humor in it. And I think that I try to find a way to do that. But no, the genre isn't important to me. I don't usually find actors talk about genre as much as they talk about the community that they're working in. You're really looking for an atmosphere that allows you to fall on your face, where failure is not, where you're not shamed, where you can actually make mistakes. And when producers and directors and writers create an atmosphere where people can fail without shame, that's when you get people doing their best work. And so actors that I know all my entire career, very rarely, I mean, you do have actors who really, much prefer, theater to working on film. But I would say, and that depends also on who you're working with and what you're doing. What's the script like? What's the community like? Actors look for the community that they can work well in and that they can work collaboratively in.
I think the comedy, so much of the comedy in Emmett Bregman is watching him deal with his frustration of filming a documentary that may never be shown. And there's a certain humor in that. He's sitting there in the editing bay, and they're like, "Where's the shot of Neil Armstrong hitting the golf on the moon? I don't have it. There's this unbelievably boring. This is talking heads. I have yak, yak, yak."
Yeah.
And
I remember it was funny. We wanted it to have that frustration to be funny.
And that he carries it out also, that he openly says, I don't care what you guys think of me. He openly goes to General Hammond's office, Don S. Davis, and, asks to use his phone to call the president. That guy had balls.
Yeah, that was all Rob Cooper. Yeah. It's great writing. And all you have to do is, carry through. When you have great writing, it's really easy. Really easy. Yeah.
Matthew wants to know, was Warehouse 13 as much fun to make as it looks? He says he's a huge fan of the show. More fun
to make than it looked. We all loved each other. We were incredibly fortunate because of Jack Kenny as our showrunner, and David Simpkins, who started us off. These were wonderful people, and Jack Kenny, who took over most of it as our showrunner and head writer, and is still a very good friend of mine, is very collaborative. And we had a lot of fun. And because he was there, on the set, we could improvise, we could fool around, and we could contribute. And it was a tremendous fun. Yeah, one of the most fun things I've ever done in my career was doing Warehouse 13. It was a great character, a great premise.
It's a show that shows that, you know, sci-fi doesn't always have to be absolutely taken seriously to
I was shocked
give
that
meaning.
The show should never have left the air. It's all these financial and political decisions. That was a show. Listen how rare that show was that you could watch it if you were 8 or 80. And it was, what do families watch together today? Game shows, singing contest shows. How many
Disney
shows
movies
are there on the air? How many shows are there on the air that, that the parents are going, okay, this is for the kids, and they, bored out of their minds, but it's for the kids. But this show works. Warehouse 13 worked on an 8-year-old level, a 15-year-old level, a 25-year-old level, an old person level. There were jokes only meant for older people. There was a sense of adventure. The violence was kept at a minimum. It was still a lot of fun. It was also, every single artifact had historical accuracy. So teachers loved the show because they could talk about it with their students in science and in math, in history, and in English literature. All the artifacts that were represented had some relation to a real historical object, right? So that was really fun. So the answer is, it was even more fun than you could imagine. It was really a fun show to do. Never should have gone off the air. Should be brought back.
Wouldn't be surprised with as much stuff that's coming back these days, And it's the best art that leads a viewer to go, let me Wikipedia that. And opens up doors of new knowledge and all. I mean, even I'm sure there's a curator or two out there who said, you know what, I fell in love with my job on watching Warehouse 13. So absolutely.
Yeah, it's great. Yeah.
Elizabeth Lee, do you have any specific rituals for when you prepare for roles, research or tools that you use, rehearsal for set or stage? What's your process? I think it kind of circles back to the discussion about how you try to find spontaneity in the dialogue, depending on how free you are to do so.
Prep is different. It depends on the role. I mean, sometimes it really is a question that I know that the less prep I do, the better. For example, I just did a role in this series called Hunters for Amazon that was with Al Pacino, based on these people who are hunting Nazis in the late 70s in New York. And my character is a Holocaust survivor who has an accent much like the accent of my own dad's accent. So it was very easy for me to do. And really, I didn't have to prepare or do any research. I was born to play it in many ways. Sometimes I did, there's intense research into what I remember really, really thinking and reading a lot about the writers that worked in Westerns before I did Unforgiven. I've played scientists where I really wanted to know a little bit more about it. Playing a character like Kivas Fajo with no notice whatsoever, having to step in to another actor's shoes because he couldn't do it, was really all that brought me back to playing an alien was children's theater and the kind of fun I had doing children's theater. So the answer is, because I'm an untrained actor, because I mean, except when I was a little boy, because I was a child actor on stage only, not in film or television, doing children's theater and some adult plays, but playing Tom Sawyer or Jim Hawkins, and I was taught by when I was a child, but otherwise I learned on the job. And so as a result of, I don't have a method as such. The method that I have is to, if there's a character I know very little about, I really try to invent a backstory that I understand, that I have secrets that I don't need to tell anybody about, some understanding of a backstory that gives me what I need in order to be as natural as possible playing the role. And sometimes there's specific research, depending on the job the character has and things that I should know about that I wouldn't otherwise know. But then everything changes, no matter what you have, whatever you prepared for, then you're faced with your co-stars. and you're faced with how long you've got to shoot it, and you're faced with the politics of the set, and you're faced with all of the problems that come with a group of people trying to create something together. And that's true in theater. It's true in all collaborative work. That the reality of the group of people affects what you're doing more than anything else, especially when you're not a superstar. There are very, very few people who are in a position where they control, they're producing, the thing is greenlit because of them. They control it all. And that presents its own problems of having, I'm sure, of having people agree with you too often because they're worried about their jobs. And you really need to have people around you that you can trust if you're in a position like that. But I've almost never been in a position like that. I've seen it with other people. But for most of us who are working either as regular characters or guest stars or recurring characters on television shows or in movies, people keep their methods private for the most part, you know? And for me, the answer to your question is there is no specific ritual that I have. It all changes depending on the circumstances that I'm in.
Understood. Thank you. Scotty0709, how do you think Artie from Warehouse 13, how do you think Artie would have reacted to the Stargate program?
Oh, that's an interesting question. That's a really interesting question. How would Artie have reacted to this program? I think that he wouldn't have liked the oversight. And I think that there would be way too much politics involved for Artie to find a home there. He would have been fired very quickly. If Artie, it's too military, you know. Yeah. Artie is real rebel.
Yeah.
And I think that he might have honored the idea of going to different worlds. But you got to remember, there are no aliens in Artie's universe.
Right.
Everything is all there. There's not an alien culture. I think he would have found it out of it. He would have been out of his depth trying to deal with it. His job was really to try to figure out, is an object actually going to do harm? How do I find out what there is harm being done? Is it the cause of an artifact? How do we get that artifact? And that's it. That's all he needs to do. And then he has to control them all in this warehouse, and he, you know, that he's given his life to. So anything that would have required the kind of rules and organization that a military atmosphere would have had to put on him, he would have been gone in 3 days. He would have been kicked out.
It's like, that's it. That's enough. Yeah, I'm done. Jeez.
He would have been dishonorably discharged.
Some people can only go so far. So, last question for you. Patrick wanted to know, was there ever any talk of bringing Emmett back? He was mentioned a couple of times later, at least once. Or were Stargate to return in the 4th series that Brad is trying to get off the ground, would you be open to a return, particularly if the Stargate program ever went public?
Wow, I didn't even know that they were trying to bring Stargate
He's
back.
been trying.
Oh, that's really cool. Of course, it's a great character. I don't know how it would fit in that universe, but the character, I was never asked about bringing him back. But he's it depends on the circumstances that he would be brought back in. But of course, I like the show so much and I like the character so much. That would be a really interesting thing to try.
Actress Kendall Cross was in season 6 as a reporter, as a news reporter. And then when there was some exposure in season 8 of the program, they brought her back in because she was owed a favor. I think Emmett Bregman would be owed a favor or two for all he put up with over the years for this thing being buried.
I think so too. I agree.
Saul, this has been a delight. Thank you so much for coming on, sir. I really do appreciate your time. And all the best to you, sir. You take care of yourself, okay?
I will. Thank you very much.
I'll wrap up the show on this end. Take care of yourself, sir.
Bye-bye.
Saul Rubinek, everyone. Emmett Bregman on Stargate SG-1. Thank you so much for joining us, and big thanks to Saul again for making this possible. He is one of the reasons why I created this program, was to hope to sit down and have this discussion, and he did not disappoint. Dial the Gate is partnered with 3dtech.pro for the month of December to give you a chance to get your very own Atlantis, Puddle Jumper, and BC-303. To enter to win these items, you need to use a desktop or laptop computer and go to visit dialthegate.com. Scroll down to Submit Trivia Questions. Your trivia may be used in a future episode of Dial the Gate, either for our monthly trivia night or for a special guest to ask me in a round of trivia. We keep talking about this. I need to start doing this again with some of the guests. There are 3 slots for trivia, 1 easy, 1 medium, and 1 hard. Only 1 needs to be filled in, but you're more than welcome to submit up to 3. And please note the submission form does not currently work for mobile devices. Your trivia must be received before April the 1st. If you're the lucky winner, I'll be notifying you via your email to get your address. And please be sure to check out our partner's website for more Stargate-related merchandise at 3dtech.pro. We have a winner for the Stargate DHD segment that was blown up in Phantoms from Empire Movie Props, and that is going to be going out to Goran Andonovsky. So he is our winner. According to Gate Gabber, he sent us 5 great sets of questions. So congratulations to Goran. I'll be reaching out to you over email in the next couple of days here, or you can email me, speed up the process if you want to, at dialthegateshow at gmail.com. And we are now offering t-shirts. Dial the Gate is brought to you every week for free, and we do appreciate you watching. But if you want to support the show further, buy yourself some of our themed swag. We're now offering t-shirts, tank tops, sweatshirts, and hoodies for all ages in a variety of sizes and colors at Redbubble. We currently offer 4 themed designs with solid, and hope to add more in the future. The word cloud designs have both a solid background or transparent background option, so you have some flexibility between choosing a light or dark color. Do keep that in mind when you're making your selection, and checkout is fast and easy, and you can use your Amazon or PayPal account as well. Just visit dialthegate.redbubble.com, and thank you for your support. And if you really enjoyed this episode, I would appreciate it if you do click that like button, because it's going to make a difference with YouTube's algorithm and allow the show to grow. Please also consider sharing this video with a Stargate friend, and if you want to get notified about future episodes, click that subscribe icon. And if you plan on watching live, I recommend giving the bell icon a click so you'll be the first to know of any schedule changes, which do happen all the time. And bear in mind, clips from this live stream will be released over the course of the next several days and weeks on the gateworld.net YouTube channels. And at some point here, Dial the Gate will also be serving up clips as well. But that's a bit of a process. So I appreciate you joining us. Thanks so much to my production assistants, Jennifer Kirby and Linda Gate Gabber Fury, Summer, Tracy, Keith, Jeremy, Reese, and Anthony. You guys make the Dial the Gate world go round, and it would not be possible without you. Thanks again to Saul Rubinek. Fantastic discussion about heroes. This is a 2-parter that just comes up in pretty much every conversation about SG-1. And it's clear to see why it was such a success. That the people who were brought in for it and the people who did the show were at their peak performance in this episode. And I'm so thankful that Rob went to Sci-Fi Channel and asked them to, give him permission to push it into 2 hours, because it's just splendid. So Vaitiari Hirschan is going to be joining us momentarily in about a little over an hour from now. She played Share and Aminette in Stargate SG-1. I'm David Reed for Dial the Gate. See you on the other side.